but make sure that you're showing them that you're not interested in any other relationship than professional. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today's talk is about 5 tips on how to build a professional relationship with great professionals, set boundaries that will not lead to any improper relationship between male and females in a professional world. This is a question I had on Instagram from one of my friends, but the thing is that in today's society, this problem is becoming very common. This issue is something that I have noticed within my own workspace, within the issues that I see in my clients' life, within their professional life, and I have seen in my own professional life, especially in some cultures where women are traditionally supposed to stay home as housewife, and a professional working woman is not yet their cultural standard. So today I have 5 tips for you which are going to be very helpful to control the boundaries between male and female in professional work. Tip number 1, no talks about private life or gossips. It's very likely for people to start talking about their private life events and whatever they did over the weekend because they want to create a conversation. You might be talking about whatever happened over the weekend or whatever you're doing in your private life. So the suggestion that I have for you guys is to keep that talk as limited as possible. So try to limit talking about your private life in detail, and also if you're in a relationship, try to bold your status. And if you don't want to be in a relationship and you're single, try to bold that as well. Try to make that stand out. Usually when you are in a relationship, it's more important for you to keep that more professional. So the suggestion that I have for you guys is to keep your status bold. So start talking, even if you want to talk about the events that happened over the weekend or something that's about your private life, try to keep your spouse and his or her name bold in your conversation. Try to talk about whatever that you did with your spouse and your children and your family over the weekend. Make that conversation about you and your spouse. Don't talk about only yourself and whatever that you did. Number 2, do not ask for advice about your private life or about a conversation or an argument you had with your spouse. Don't ever talk about miscommunication or an argument that you had with your spouse, because as human, we might be in a bad mood some days. We might have had an argument before we go to work. We might not be in a very positive mood vibe, but even if they get your vibe, even if they ask you what happened, even if they ask you if you're okay, don't ever talk about your problems with your spouse, and don't try to ask them for advice. That is the worst thing you can do, because as soon as you do this, you're breaking that boundary and you're getting one step closer behind and beyond that professional wall that you need to have between the two of you. Even on a normal daily conversation you have with your coworkers, try to talk about something that you feel comfortable if your spouse was there and heard you talk about it. Or you can even put yourself in their shoes, your spouse's shoes, and talk about things that you are comfortable if you heard your spouse talking to their colleagues at work. So try to keep that common sense and try to notice your own behavior, your own talks, and that's the first thing you need to do. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. The first thing is to keep your own intention, your own behavior, and your own thoughts honest, clear, and bold to yourself. And then you can transform that to your colleagues. So make sure you stay honest to yourself first before anything, and then when you start talking to them, try to talk to them in a way that if your spouse was there to hear it, you would still say the same thing, same words, and you would still have the same conversation. And if your voice, let's say if your voice was recorded, you would not be deleting it for your spouse not to hear that conversation. Number 3 is body language, and that's one of the most important things that you need to keep in mind while you're building that boundary between yourself and your colleague. The body language that I want to talk to you guys about today, and that's, I believe, one of the most three of the most important body languages that you need to be aware of, is eye contact. Because eye contact is very important at workplace. You need to have eye contact. You cannot stare at the floor or the sky or your hands, because you need to talk to them looking at their eyes. But you need to make sure that look is professional. You need to stare at their eyes and talk to them while you're talking professionally. If the talk is going to a different direction by them, because you have to make sure it doesn't go to a different direction by you, if it's going to a wrong direction by them, you need to cut your eye contact. This way you can end the conversation. That's going to help you end that weird conversation that they're leading toward. Another body language that I want to point out is your physical distance. Right now, with what's happening in the world with the COVID-19, physical distancing will help you understand this point of mine. In a professional world, try to keep that physical distance. Try to not to sit too close, not to walk too close, and when you're talking, not to stand too close to each other, just to keep it professional. Whatever that you're doing, whenever that you're talking to your colleague, keep a proper distance. I'm sure that we all know what a proper distance is, and we all know what we need to do, but sometimes we forget. So try to pay attention to your distance with your colleague when you're talking to them, when you're sitting beside them or with them, or when you're standing beside them. Try to keep that distance professional. Another body language is touch. Try not to touch your colleague when you're talking. Try not to be too touchy, even if you are one of those touchy people, not with your colleague, not in a professional world. When you're saying hi or bye, a handshake would be sufficient enough. You don't have to go for a hug. And when you're talking, you don't have to keep touching them. Also, the last body language that I have in mind is to keep your arms closed. Don't open your arms. If you're walking towards them, don't open your arms. If you're walking outside of the door, do not open your arms, because that is an invitation to get closer to you. Keep your arms attached to your body. Oh, you don't need to look too awkward doing this, but you know what I mean. Don't try to be too friendly and too inviting, because that will give them that impression. And if someone does that for you, if someone does that to you and comes towards you with open arms, try to keep your arms close to your body. Don't do the same thing, and don't get too close to them. Stay away, handshake, and that will keep it professional. Tip number three, random meetings are not proper outside of your office work office work time and office space. So let's say you get asked from a colleague to meet them for lunch or dinner outside of your work hours or workplace. If that happens, try to say no. Try to suggest to go for a meeting in your office, or if that's not possible, just go for a coffee, for a tea, and keep that professional as well. If they insist on going on a professional date for dinner, then make sure you go with your spouse and their spouse. And that would also be a great way to network with other people and brainstorm. But as soon as you go with your spouse, that will make it look more professional. And make sure, don't forget to nurture your relationship as a couple. If you go with your spouse, nurture your relationship. If you're going over a coffee for a meeting, just make sure you do call your spouse and talk to them over the phone. If not, if they're not available, if you cannot call them, make sure you do talk about your spouse. Make sure you do have the conversation of you and your spouse as a couple. If the conversation gets anything beyond your professional work conversation, then keep your spouse beside you. Don't talk only about yourself. It's you and your spouse. Make sure he or she sees that clearly. Tip number 4, become the knife if needed. And that sounds very wild, but that's not what I meant. If you ever feel like your colleague is getting closer than they're supposed to, if you feel like they're getting into not proper conversation or a behavior, cut the rope immediately. Right there, you have to identify if they're going beyond their limits and cut the rope right there. This doesn't have to be done in a rude way. It could be done very professional and very polite. The way that you could do it, one is that you could change the conversation to a professional talk, to your work conversation, and change the subject immediately. Or you can change the subject and start talking about your family, your spouse, and your children. And right when you're talking about them, when you change the subject, you can get up and start by leaving the room and ending the conversation. That's again your body language. Once you start getting up, if you're sitting down or if you're walking towards the door, then they'll know that the conversation is ending. But you're going to end the conversation while you're talking about something related to your spouse or your work. Another thing that you can do is that not to smile or laugh at their jokes that are not proper. If they're joking with you or if they're saying things that are, again, not proper, don't laugh, don't smile. And don't give them the bad look. Just be professional, be polite, but again, change the subject without laughing or smiling. And if they're starting a conversation with you that does not feel comfortable to you, do not continue the conversation. Don't. End it right there and change the subject. Again, I'm trying to emphasize that you need to change the subject when you feel like something is getting uncomfortable. And if it's getting too much out of control, then just try to just change your department. But if the first step is for you to control it, and then if you keep controlling it and they keep rejecting your control and they want to get closer to you, then it's better if you don't work with them. But if you are controlling it well, most of the times it's going to work very well for you. And again, if the conversation is getting out of control or if the behavior is getting out of control, call your spouse, talk to them in a loving tone and let them hear that. Let them hear your close relationship with your spouse and let them know that you are not interested in their whatever behavior and joke and conversation they're trying to have. So last but not least is our number 5, and that is to keep their spouse or their partner into the picture. So if they are married or if they are dating someone or if they're with someone, you need to keep them in the picture. Whenever you see your colleague, whenever you walk into the office, you say hi to them, the first thing you're going to ask them is about their partner. How are they doing? And the simple question will bring them into the conversation. And whenever whenever you see their partner or you talk about them, make sure you point out how beautiful they are and how great they are. And this way you could make sure that you're showing them that you're not interested in any other relationship than professional. Video that I'm recording today, it does not go for every professional relationship because in many cases, both male and female keep it professional and they know that this is only a professional relationship, they're faithful, they have a good relationship. But sometimes, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, especially with some cultures, it's a little bit hard and sometimes it gets out of control. But because we want to prevent that from happening and we want to make sure that whatever professional relationship we're walking into, it's going to stay professional and we're just going to keep it as a work relationship, then it's much better if we go into that relationship knowing that we need to set boundaries from the first day. It doesn't matter who the other person is. It doesn't matter what their intention is. It doesn't matter how they behave. You are the one who should set your boundaries from the first day. And if you feel like the boundaries are not working for some people, then you just have to stop working with them. But again, as I mentioned, this type of boundary should be working for most people. But for sometimes it doesn't. So just get out of that relationship or work with them. I hope you guys liked it. And if you did, please leave a comment for me. And I would be very glad to hear your comments about this video. Also, if you want me to record a video or if you want to hear tips from me about anything that you have in mind, please let me know and I'll be more than happy to record a video. If you do like my videos, I will really appreciate it if you guys subscribe to my channel somewhere around here. And also you could follow me on my Instagram where I'm mostly active all day. And I hope to see you guys soon. I wish you an amazing, beautiful, joyful, lovely day. Bye.